Thank you all to all the community, law enforcement, and nonprofit partners, advocates, and of course survivors who are with us today. January is about new beginnings and fresh starts for ourselves and our community. It also marks Human Trafficking Awareness Month, a time to renew our commitment to survivors, bring an end to the difficult circumstances they face, and create opportunities for safe, stable futures that are free from exploitation. I'd like to take a moment to tell you all a story that shows a little bit about this work in action. A few months ago, a young mother and her child reached out for help while fleeing a domestic sex trafficking situation. With resources running out, they faced the very real risk of returning to harm. Our partners at JSO immediately responded, working alongside advocates and federal partners to ensure the mother and child's safety. Together, the team coordinated safe housing in another state, secured basic needs, and arranged safe travel for both of them. The young family safely boarded a flight the following day and were welcomed into a transitional home in another state. They found safety as well as dignity, a fresh closet of clothing, new toys for her child, a pantry stocked with food, and her very first brand new pair of shoes. This coordinated response did more than resolve an immediate crisis. It altered the trajectory of a family, ensuring that a mother could thrive and a child could grow up outside of a life in trafficking. This happy ending was only possible because of strong collaboration between our local nonprofits and law enforcement. And the connection may never have been made if it weren't for a sign that was seen at Everbank Stadium. Last year, the City of Jacksonville partnered with organizations in the human trafficking and domestic violence spaces to identify new ways to reduce sex trafficking. One of those ideas was to create a no trafficking sports and entertainment district. We chose this area because we know that the demand for human trafficking goes up during major sporting events and concerts, and because it should be a hub of culture, a symbol of growth, and a source of pride, never a place that puts vulnerable people, the most vulnerable among us, in harm's way. With that goal in mind, we built a coalition that included many of the partners that are here alongside me today. Jacksonville's professional sports teams. Together, we launched a 3-game pilot in the fall that made us the first city to use stadium signage to target 2 distinct messages. First, to provide resources, remind potential victims of trafficking that help is available. And second, to send a direct message to potential buyers of sex. You will be held accountable in Jacksonville for this crime. That second part is key, and it makes this initiative unique. An entire black market industry exists because of demand, because there are people willing to pay for access to another person's body. Without buyers, there would be no market for exploitation. If we can change minds, we can end the demand. Another part of this pilot was assembling a team of law enforcement, event venue staff, and survivors who would be available in the event that someone reached out to the number on the signs. At one of the games, the team was able to connect with and help that mother and child that I mentioned earlier. Their lives were forever changed for the better because of that program. This is just one example of what's possible when we raise awareness and when we work together on solutions. And our anti-human trafficking initiative will only grow from here. We will be installing these signs in other sports and entertainment venues so the public remains alert and informed about human trafficking. And lastly, we are exploring more staff training to identify potential trafficking situations and working to create a hospital partner where victims can go for immediate medical support. We're making progress, but of course this work is far from over. We're really just getting started here. We dedicate ourselves to a vision where every survivor is safe, able to thrive, and supported on the path to healing. We cannot and we will not tolerate trafficking in our community ever. To every survivor out there, we see you, we hear you, and we love you. Your strength is our inspiration. To every person who is suffering in silence, you are not alone, and help is available for you. This community will fight for you. To the people of Jacksonville and Northeast Florida, if you see something suspicious, please please report it to the Florida Abuse Hotline. That number is 1-800-96-ABUSE, or to the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-373-7888. So let us continue to build a community where trafficking has no home and where every person is protected. Thank you. And next we're going to hear from Chief Shell, JSO's Chief of Homeland Security, on how they support survivors and deliver justice.
Thank you, Mayor. So good morning. I'm Mike Shell. I'm the Chief of Homeland Security at the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. On behalf of Sheriff T.K. Waters, it's an honor to speak regarding JSO's participation in the Intercept Task Force. I want to begin by thanking our partners with whom we would not be able to do this important work of rescuing victims of child exploitation and human trafficking. Child exploitation is an insidious criminal poison that victimizes some of the most vulnerable members of our community. Technology has given us many tools to live our lives more fully. Unfortunately, it's also given new predators new avenues to victimize children. We gather here today to collectively reaffirm our commitment to ending child exploitation and human trafficking. These are hidden crimes so well veiled that you may have seen indicators of them and simply not known. The Intercept Task Force brings together dedicated and specialized detectives who use cutting-edge technologies and investigative best practices to rescue victimized children. The partnerships built through the Intercept Task Force allow detectives to effectively conduct investigations in the complex, hidden, and dangerous world in which child exploitation and human trafficking flourishes. On behalf of Sheriff Waters and the men and women of JSO, I want to close by reaffirming our commitment to the Intercept Task Force and ending child exploitation and human trafficking in all forms. Thank you for being here, and thank you again to our Intercept Task Force partners. Now we're going to hear from State Attorney Melissa Nelson.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a privilege to be here today alongside so many law enforcement and community partners focusing on an issue that is of such importance as this. Each January, as Mayor Deegan said, we come together to raise awareness about the very real signs and dangers of human trafficking. And when you look around this room, you see the strength of that effort. Law enforcement, nonprofit organizations, community partners, and survivors all working toward the same goal. Everyone here plays a role. That collaboration made a real difference in a case resolved last year. Ulysses Dixon, then just 29 years old, controlled multiple women and forced them to perform sex acts for money. He posted advertisements on social media, and when calls came in, his victims were made to arrange dates, perform acts against their will, and turn over money to him. They were not free to leave. An operation by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office brought the abuse to light, and our office, the State Attorney's Office, worked closely with investigators to ensure the evidence was carefully developed and the victims' voices heard. One victim told a detective, "You have to help me get out of this." Our prosecutors reviewed the evidence, worked with law enforcement and victim advocacy partners, and held Dixon accountable in court. Investigators learned he used physical violence and even a taser to punish victims who did not comply with his commands and controlled them through drugs, a common tactic traffickers use to maintain power and fear. These women were terrified for their lives. Because of that thorough work, Dixon ultimately pled guilty to 2 counts of human trafficking and was sentenced last year to 15 years in Florida State Prison. I share this case because it really reflects what accountability looks like when law enforcement, prosecutors, and community partners work together. But it also underscores that the work does not end with a conviction. Supporting survivors and preventing future exploitation requires continued vigilance, coordination, and trust, and like the work done here at Intercept. So personally, thank you to each of you for the work you do, and thank you to our community members for speaking up and reporting these crimes. With that, I'll invite our friend to the south, Sheriff Hardwick.
Thank you, State Attorney, Mayor, Chief, Sheriff, but most importantly, our federal, state, and local partners that stand behind me today. You're standing in kind of a very sacred place, I'll be honest with you, and Michelle Cook and Sheriff Cook is going to discuss that in just a little bit. But the group of men and women that work behind the scenes, quietly, relentlessly, working on a silent crime that is not as easy to solve as a retail theft from a local store, or a robbery that just occurred, even a homicide. These crimes hide behind the curtains, the dark curtains. In St. Johns County Sheriff's Office, I can just simply tell you that we have dedicated to this mission, work relentlessly with our state, local, and federal partners to get this done. But honestly, the men and women that actually work behind the scenes at our agency back home in St. Johns County, up here in Jacksonville, in Clay County, in Flagler, in Putnam, Nassau, it's key to success. We in St. Johns County have actually dedicated to a relentless task force on Interstate 95. We believe that's the root of some of this evil, meaning this human trafficking going on. We worked in detail last year under the direction of CID Director Skip Cole. 22 arrests was actually obtained by our men and women down there. Some of those tied directly into sex exploitation, sex trafficking, trafficking in children, and human trafficking. Again, it's a crime that hides behind these curtains. It's not easy to solve. So you got to have the right people in the right place. I do want to mention some things. Our victim advocates work so hard behind the scenes, and I don't think they get quite the notoriety as they should get. But our victim advocates in St. Johns County, Ashley Mitchell, she put together a list for me, and I want to read this list to you as I close out on my comments. Things like the SJSO victim advocates, they work and they're available 24 hours a day. Text HELP at 233-733, be free for help and resources. We'll put all this out to you in press release. Call 988 for anyone who finds themselves in a crisis and struggling with mental health. I think you'll hear a lot of these cases are tied into mental illness, mental health, substance abuse, trafficking. UF Behavioral Health Resource Center is open 24 hours a day. Partnerships and partner organizations to include Her Song, which is part of the Tim Tebow Foundation, where we sit today as part of Operation Light Shine. And last, the Loris Barr Weaver Policy Center in Jacksonville. Again, these are just all resources for our people that are out there and struggling with human trafficking. And as one of my directors said to me, and I'll take this and I'll leave with this today, this crime thrives in silence. Thank you. I'll introduce Clay County Sheriff Michelle Cook.
Thank you. I want to, the cameras can't obviously see all the people that are standing behind you and beside you. There's probably over 100 people in this room right now representing law enforcement, non-governmentals, your advocacy groups, your nonprofits. This is just amazing. I think about, a couple of years ago when we first brought the Intercept concept to life, and to see this many people standing in the room right now is amazing and overwhelming. But I want to talk to you right now about the law enforcement agencies that have representation here in this building that fight this crime every day. Because what we have discovered is that when we partner together on this sort of crime, we do so much better at apprehending the bad guys and rescuing the victims. So working out of this building are members of the Clay County Sheriff's Office, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office, Nassau County Sheriff's Office, Flagler County Sheriff's Office, Putnam County Sheriff's Office, the U.S. Attorney's Middle District Office, HSI Jacksonville. Our local state attorney, Ms. Nelson, just recently assigned an attorney to work out of this office with our detectives, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and the Secret Service, all with one mission, and that is to fight child exploitation and human trafficking. Human trafficking is a serious and often hidden crime that's been said a few times today, and it frequently goes unnoticed, which is why it's important for the public to understand what it can look like here in our own community. Human trafficking does not always look the same. In some cases, it can be involved forced labor, it can be exploitation, it's control, and in some cases, it starts out and appears to be a normal relationship or a romantic connection, but becomes dangerous when manipulation, coercion, and exploitation become a part of that relationship. Exploitation targets vulnerability, and in many cases, traffickers take advantage of individuals who are struggling with substance abuse, mental health challenges, or difficult life circumstances. These offenders are willing to exploit these vulnerabilities for their own gain. And our responsibility as law enforcement is to turn victims into thriving survivors and hold offenders accountable. We work to stop these crimes, disrupt the exploitation, and help victims move towards safety and recovery. At the same time, we want our community members to know that they are safe, seen, and heard. Human trafficking has no place in any of our communities, and we will continue working with our partners to confront it.
Sadly, offenders do not limit themselves by age. Younger children can be especially vulnerable to manipulation, and that risk often begins online. I urge, this whole team urges parents, please be engaged with what your children are doing online and what social media and gaming platforms they are using. Our offenders are really sneaky, and they'll start talking to these kids via these platforms. And I recently was made aware of a case where an 11-year-old girl was told she was loved by an older gentleman who met her through an online gaming application, and it's absolutely horrible. The Northeast Florida Intercept Task Force has remained committed to fighting trafficking and exploitation since it was created nearly 3 years ago. In that time frame, here's some numbers. In that time frame, we have worked over 1,600 cases, 17 of those specifically brought up on charges of human trafficking, but the rest are all related to exploitation and child sexual assault material. And that's just this task force alone. All of these agencies, all of our agencies also work cases on our own, but this is just 1,600 cases out of this office right here. It's important to know that exploitation cases often lead to trafficking, and is why we put our focus on exploitation in our community. We will not let it stand, as protecting our children and our most vulnerable is our most important job. It is also important to know that these numbers are different, as I mentioned, in every agency. I do want to again thank our partners, the team over here. All of you do amazing work. I know on the front end we're doing the law enforcement, but behind the scenes, helping all the victims and all the children of the victims to regain their dignity and to help them work through the terrible circumstances that they have found themselves in. Thank you for everything that you do. These partners, just as a follow-up, will be hosting a community event Saturday, January 24th, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at FSCJ downtown campus. And I hope anybody who's watching who would like to learn more information can join them. Again, it'll be January 24th, downtown Jacksonville at FSCJ campus, 10 to 3. And with that being said, I'm going to open it up to any media questions. I am respectfully asking the media to keep our focus on what we're here for today, which is human trafficking and how the Intercept Task Force works to fight this crime. So any questions from the media?
At the top of the news conference, you mentioned the large events. We're, of course, going to be having some large games in Jacksonville the next few weeks. Can you say specifically what you meant that we stop human trafficking at these large sports venues? What was done? What people who go to these sports venues should know?
Yep, so like was said earlier, those venues are always opportunities for people to both move victims through those venues, and your consumer side, your buyers of that stuff are also moving through those venues. So we've partnered with all those sporting venues. There's posters in restrooms, posters in other areas of there, identifying both for people who suspect they might see trafficking or victims to reach out and call. I don't want to go into too many other details, but there are folks there that are looking for these things with the goal of obviously putting that to a stop.
And that would continue this weekend?
That's going to continue through all sporting events.
And Sheriff Cook, you had a number, I think it was 1,600, the number of cases that this task force has worked. Can you tell me that number again?
Just over 1,600 cases that are Intercept Task Force members, which is the team that works specifically out of this building. That's the number of cases they've worked in the last 3 years.
Thank you. And I do want to know, is there something specific about this crime in Northeast Florida? So many of you guys are here working on this. Is this something more rampant in Northeast Florida?
I don't think it's necessarily more rampant, but I think what it is community leaders who really care about this crime. Community leaders who, oftentimes historically this crime was kind of put in the past or was put to the side as not a primary crime of concern, right? Well, because of the work of our advocates who've brought it to our attention and the work that our detectives have done bringing this to our attention, we realize this is serious. This is not a crime that needs to be held in silence. This is not a crime that needs to be behind the scenes or an afterthought. We care that much about our members of our community who are the most vulnerable, who are the ones that are typically victimized when it comes to child sex trafficking and human trafficking.
A few years ago during Human Trafficking Awareness Month, there was a big push to put signs up at adult entertainment facilities. Can you speak to dealing with Jacksonville adult entertainment facilities? Has there been progress? Have there been problems?
No, so we do interact with those facilities, and that is an opportunity to come across victims who are going through these circumstances. And that communication is still in place. Every day our members of our vice unit have interactions with those. We have detectives specifically assigned to investigate human trafficking who are part of our vice unit. And that's part of where they reach out and look for these victims and look for opportunities to pursue the people who are trafficking these victims.
Sheriff, can someone, whether it be our southern law enforcement or our northern agencies or whatnot, talk about like where are these folks coming from? Is it a local thing? Are they? Is Flagler seeing more out of Orlando? Is Nassau seeing more out of Georgia? Those kind of things.
Well, let me tell you what we see in Clay County, and this is really what's interesting about Northeast Florida. If you take some of your bigger cities, Miami, Tampa, and even. And I don't want to say Jacksonville, but Jacksonville, when there's big sporting events, you may see an influx of people coming in, right? But our day-to-day human trafficking that we see, especially in Clay County, is younger people who are being groomed by older people with the thought of love and gifts and, I'm going to take you out of this county and move you somewhere fancy. And so you have young people being groomed by older people, and then you add alcohol, you add drugs, and then what in my world that begins the pace of human trafficking in Clay County. And I'll let the other counties talk about what they see specifically, but in Clay County that's what we're seeing is older people, mostly men, grooming young elementary school, middle school boys and girls with the promise of love.
Sheriff, I can answer that.
Yeah.
County local?
If you want.
Yeah.
So I'm
Introduction, sir.
Yeah, I'm Greg Keogh. I'm the United States Attorney for the Middle District of Florida. And just going to your question, we see people enticed in traffic between states, Texas to Florida, Georgia to Florida, South Carolina. It's not just one place. It is interstate and international, frankly, bringing in some younger people with false immigration documents, and then those individuals being compromised once they're here. So it's not just one place at one time. There's a tremendous amount of trafficking going on, and as the sheriff had mentioned previously, trafficking for a lot of these people it's all about the money. It brings a tremendous amount of money, and some of those people receive up to about $40,000 a head. So if you're looking for a reason why this is happening, that's why it's happening, and it's happening throughout the United States, and it's happening across borders, and it's happening interstate.
Sir, could you say if in the last year when there's been a massive focus on immigration, if you've seen human trafficking cases go up or down?
I'd say it would be about constant. There is a component in it on immigration trafficking, such as we had a case recently here in the Middle District of Florida where people were being smuggled into the country with false documentation, false visas, etc., with these that had come in through Cuba, but with the false documentation they looked like they were coming in from Spain, etc. And some of those people were juveniles that came in here and then came in to pose as if they had been, present here for a significant period of time. That's just one component of it. That's the immigration component, but there's also the other component that the sheriff was just talking about, going interstate, of their movement with enticement, child exploitation, and then just human smuggling across state lines.
Sheriff Cook, can you speak to what parents should do? You talked a lot about the online, and it's just confusing for parents sometimes because you don't always know, who's on the line, if the person's doing anything illegal. Can you talk about the dynamic for parents and how they should navigate that?
Sure. I mean, smartphones are a reality. I can tell you my kids didn't get a smartphone until they started 9th grade. Now, is that appropriate for every family? I can't speak for what every family should do, but I'm going to tell you, if you're not aware of who your kids are talking to online, if you are not aware of what gaming platforms they're using online, you are opening up your kid. It's no different than taking your little kid to a park and leaving them there alone. It's no different than that, Scott. And so parents, you have to dial in. And is it confusing? Sure. Is there a lot of different apps out there as parents that we got to learn? Sure. But there's so much of information available on the internet, and there are so many groups out there that are willing to help you look at what applications your child is using and say, these are safer than others. I mean, that's all out there and available to parents. You've got to pay attention to what your kids are doing, because I'm telling you, as soon as you turn your back, there's somebody that's trying to talk to them.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank you.